All right, welcome to Rapid Fire Manufacturing. Today we have Demi Knight-Clark. She is honestly a game changer in construction world with over 25 years of experience. She's done it all. She's led divisions, she's founded a nonprofit for women in trades, and she's paving the way for women to succeed in the evolving world of trade tech. Honestly, there's so much that I could write and talk about with her. So, Demi, thank you for joining and for all that you're doing in the industry and the barriers that you're knocking down. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
So I want to talk about, what do you see sort of the trends for 2025 for recruiting and getting people heavily involved in manufacturing? Like, where are we going with this?
Well, that's such a huge question. I'll try to do my best to keep it to like talk points. And you and I can talk for hours on this, I know, because we have is a couple of things. One is the narrative. I talk about this a lot, just the lexicon that we use. We have so many assets in manufacturing. It's so far next gen technology. It blows my mind just to be at Fab Tech and some of the other shows that we have in this industry and to see the robotics, the cobots, everything that AI is, just rocking the tech world and everybody's saying like replacing jobs. All of this stuff has been around technologically in manufacturing, but we always seem to downplay it. Engineers know about it and engineering, in college and recruiting there, but it's not out and into the bigger trade life. And I think that's for a couple of reasons that we don't have time to unpack today, but we've kind of taken it out of the trade conversation of STEM, right? STEM has been at the heart of manufacturing since day one, and it just continues to be that. So it should be so easy to recruit in our industry and also to diversify, to add more women, people of color, and of diverse profiles, which companies say to me every day. I'm trying so hard to do this, but I'm scratching my head because we're finding the same profiles. It's a great time to be in this industry. And so I'm constantly trying to solve for that with people and then also advocate for it to just unpack where do we have to go and how, authentic do people have to be to say, where are we going to find people? And so that's at the heart of it. Those are the two big issues I see for recruiting is saying, let's put STEM back into the narrative, whether that's in welding, which is a big part of my world, or some of the things that you see as more of a shop floor kind of a job, but your company is doing way bigger things with that. And then also the future of the trades that you have hired to be within that have technology so ingrained into it. And then also, where do you go to find your recruits? If you want a diverse profile, you have to go to where those diverse profiles are. And that's really where I've kind of dove in quite literally with sports in the last couple of weeks.
And now, so where are you going to kind of open up and have these conversations?
Yeah, great question. Two places, STEM. So wherever STEM is, because that to me is the lowest lift is if we need a pipeline that is, I look at it as an A and B pipeline. One is the butts in seats. That's what you hear in nonprofits. That's what you hear in the recruiting world. It's like we need people in the chairs right now doing the jobs, wherever that is on a job site, in an office, so be it. So there's the butts in seats numbers that you'll see, just such a wide variety of like, we need X amount of welders by 2028 or, whatever part of the industry. And then there's also the pipeline that is the exposure pipeline, which has just been eradicated in the last 20 years. So Google came about. I was part of the Y2K.com boom, lost my job, and that's how I got into construction in 2003. And we kind of lost that narrative of saying vocational technology. Technology's been part of that. It was STEM when we were doing CTE trades way back when, but then it turned into more of the Google technology, which, by nature of what we needed at the time of the early 2000s. Now I see that pendulum swinging back of saying like parents are looking at all-time highs for college, in cost. I've got two, one in a band right now that are in college, and then also just exposing them at middle school, 12 to 16-year-olds. So I live there with some camps and things I'm coming up with a couple foundations. I'm trying to get true trades back in to the hands of the kids that are 12 to 16 and call it STEM. Partner with STEM orgs so that the lift is not as high as saying like, hey, we need to go build a school. You really just need to partner with a lot of the STEM after schools or organizations that already exist. So there's that pipeline to it. And then again, from the recruiting pipeline, I say go wherever your trade is not, but look at the profile you're looking to hire. So right now, if I look at myself, I'm self-identifying, I'm a white female, and I played sports. And so I've partnered up with Osprey, which is joinosprey.com. It's think of a chief for women in sports and women female executives in sports, which is very male dominated, and getting their word out as they're in pioneering industries. They're trying to upskill and reskill themselves after the athletic pursuits of being D1 college sports, or maybe not even going to college and going straight into the sports pipeline and now figuring out, what do I do next? Either the speaker circuit or coaching circuit, or how do I get into manufacturing companies? And then also those manufacturing companies, you could be getting, if you're advertising in women's soccer, look at all those girls that are watching women's soccer right now. So your pipeline, that 12 to 16-year-old, can start earlier. So it's really advocating in two of those places, which is just where our trades are not putting them. So whether that's Hollywood, whether that's in women's sports, whether that's in STEM, it's putting it in all those places. And so a lot of times people are like, I don't understand what you're doing. And it's like, you just have to think so future, bleeding edge, that we're going to get there in the next 5 years. I just have these visions in my head. I always seem to see it like 5 years ahead and say, like, now we just need to make it real for people so that they can follow, be early adopters wherever you want to be in that spectrum.
No, that's really cool. And you talked about this earlier too. Right now, it seems like we kind of compartmentalize certain things. How do we just not just stay in one area? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think every industry has it's just comfort. It's comfort. We get comfortable and then we get busy. And so busy is always just the huge, monster in the room for any efficiency and productivity and innovation really in a company. And so once you get into that busy cycle, like right now I'm hearing like, let's do that in 2025. Well, you have 28 days still. I just posted about that on LinkedIn today. I need to hear it too. I would love to put on the brakes and be like, oh, let's just make some Christmas cookies and just do the thing. And I'm not saying don't do that, but I'm saying you've got to rely on, if you have strategic initiatives into 2025 that take some like brainstorming, go make your creative process time again. And if that's part of recruiting, which it is for everyone, I don't care if you're hiring today or if you're just pipeline hiring for the next 4 years, what do you want your team to look like? And if you want a profile that is more well-rounded and having diversity of ideas, thoughts, really future tense challenges as we get into some really cool stuff in manufacturing of challenges to solve for, especially on the US soil side, with this next administration, why wouldn't you be saying like, what do we need to do to say, okay, we know our strategic initiatives coming up for 2025. Now let's carve out some time and just get as many people in the room to talk about it and say, what could we be doing differently? Like that should just be part of the checkbox if you're leadership, in my opinion, is to say, okay, we know what we're doing. Now what do we want to try to do differently? Just a few different things. And if that's in the recruiting pipeline, try sponsoring women's soccer. I'm just giving an example, and say like, hey, let's try this for 6 months. Look at the KPIs, look at the metrics and see, hey, did we move the needle here, right? If you're trying to move the needle, don't just talk about it. And I think that's what we kind of fall into. And again, that's trade agnostic. I don't want to say we're industry agnostic. I want to just come down really hard on manufacturing. That's every industry, is to say like, we fall into our comfortable patterns, but then we're like, oh wait, but how do we solve this really huge challenge now that's just like crept up on us? Like, no, we've known this for a long time. So make it healthy. If that helps.
No, that's a great point too. And you even touched on that. It's like, we talk about it, but we're not doing it. And I'm definitely guilty of that too. It's like, I'm talking about workforce development and stuff, and I want to get more involved. Like, I need to figure out what strategies I can take to really get involved, right?
Well, and you talked about, with women, I think that's another place I live, that it's so awesome for you to be so authentic, to say like, I want to know, and I'm not putting words in your mouth, hopefully, of like, how can I advocate more for women? And I think that's a place that I'm really trying to unpack in like closed door sessions, because that's not something you get on a panel as male leadership and say, as an ally of like, hey, I don't know what I'm doing here. I have no idea how to have a more diverse workforce or to have more women if I want to stick to gender. If like welding, for instance, 3% women, 97% men, like that's a huge delta in 2024, almost 2025. Like, come on, we had 15 million women, to include my grandmother as a Rosie, back in 1943. So if we just pendulum swung so far, like that's going to be a recruiting problem. It's not just like a moral and ethical thing to me of like, yeah, we should probably, from a human perspective, have more women on staff. It's a, hey, you're going to have a healthier pipeline challenge if you figure out where other places to be are. So packing that and saying like, nobody's pointing the finger. Those are the primary conversations I have right now with male leadership, is to say like, just say it's okay. It's okay to be where you are right now. If it's 3%, 97% in your company, now let's unpack that and tell me more. And we can come up with some strategies and ideas to say, how could we go and find more of the people that I'm looking for that are not staring at, just the face that I see in the mirror and that profile of what I know as my lived experience. So being honest and open about that, I think, is step one. And I'm just trying to create, safer spaces to be able to do that for men.
That's awesome. And you did mention too, it's the first step is sometimes it's best to just be quiet and listen to what's going on, right? Can
Oh,
you talk about that a little bit?
yeah. I struggle with that. I have 18 and 20-year-old daughters, and I have to do that with my kids. So any parents out there, you kind of get it, where you're like, oh, I
Hmm.
want to tell them what to do this summer. I want to tell them what to do for their internship. That's not helicopter parenting. That's just trying to be this guidepost for your kids. And I think it's the same in organizations. You don't have to have kids to know this. It's just we are paid to be the expert, the subject matter expert. So, this is like learned behavior in a workplace. So it's hard, but it is really servant leadership to step back and say, like, I'm going to shut up and just be the whiteboard operator today. And I think that's because by nature of having more men in that room, it's going to be more men that have to do that. So I want them to be comfortable doing that and saying, like, you're not coming across as not being the authority when you have to stand on that wall and be accountable for something. You are saying, hey, I need to hear from the team because I'm going to hear from the trends when I am the whiteboard operator for once, and saying, like, you know what, Sarah had this like crazy idea. Let's go, let's do it. And now let's empower Sarah to get that done. So it's more from that perspective. And again, the more men that I talk to, the more I hear it. It's not as easy to make that happen in more organizations, just because, again, they're on the wall. They're on the firing line to be accountable for the numbers. So it's just making better spaces for them to be comfortable to do that.
No, that's really cool. Now, what are some organizations you recommend that men can join to get more involved?
I think, rather to be super specific, I would say whatever, especially in manufacturing, there's plenty of them. I mean, clearly you've got women in manufacturing. That's probably the strongest you have available to you, is to get involved with them. But there's a lot of
Hmm.
subsets of those that it might be company. Like Microsoft has women of Microsoft, and I know I'm giving it a tech example, but I'm trying to stay out of the industry because I don't want to promote someone or, make anybody feel ashamed if they don't have one. You should have an employee resource group if you're a large enough company. Now, if you're a family run shop, you probably are not going to have that. But I say start Googling women in and your subset of the industry. If that's machining, if that is robotics, if that is manufacturing, you do have, it starts with the umbrella orgs, but then there's a lot more subsets of that I say even, and support at all levels. And if there is one, I will say this, if there is one in your org that's an employee resource group or an ERG, or there is someone in your city, men, please get involved. I've been to so many women's conferences that men are like, but that's for the women. And they're trying to keep that a safer space for the women to be able to talk about anything they want. Honestly, the things that are talked about at those sessions and at those very open, anyone can register events are things that men need to hear. And so I know I'm kind of taking a platform to speak for all women, unless it says, hey, this is for women only, because we need a super, super authentic and validated safe space. We need more men to be involved in these women's orgs to hear what they have to say.
That's incredible. I will be definitely looking into that. And for those of you watching, stay tuned for more industry experts like Demi. Demi, thank you so much for your time. It's always a
Absolutely.
pleasure talking with you. I appreciate everything you're doing in the industry.
Thank you. Keep it up.